Well, what we learned was they have the resources they need. They have the engagement of every relevant federal agency, every data set, every technology, and they have a investigation that's divided into two parts. One, the homicide investigation. Why these places? Why these people? What's his background? But second, and this would be the top priority, is the manhunt, where they've devoted the largest number of people and resources because it appears that from hitting the two locations, and when the commissioner was asked specifically why those places, he said, well, that goes to motive, which suggests, it doesn't state implicitly, but it suggests that he picked those two places for a reason, that there was some connection either between him and those places or those people.
And suggesting they know more than they're saying publicly right now.
Exactly. But his escape is to the end of a road in the woods that has a trailhead and a boat launch. So it appears he knows the area. He didn't make that turn by mistake. It suggests he had a plan, and the plan was to stay at large and not to be captured there or immediately after, as so many of these active shooters are, which adds another element to this. It's not just, a manhunt within a small area.
Right.
It's somebody who's got the resources and the training to put some distance between them, possibly.
And Jonathan, let me bring you in here. I mean, what did you hear? I mean, we learned some new details, of course, the death toll tragically being updated, but there were still a lot of questions that were left unanswered, perhaps because this suspect is still on the run. I mean, what else were you hearing, and what else stuck out to you?
Well, listen, there was a lot of insight during this press conference, but not a lot of information that people were really seeking. What we heard was, just as Mr. Miller just said, there's a significant law enforcement coordination ongoing around the investigation that is underway, but the details are lacking, and that's probably by design for one of two reasons. One, either they just don't have the information, or they're following up on investigative leads and they don't want to reveal what their approach and methodology is going to be to address this. But when you're addressing the public, you need to reassure them, right? And I think the number one thing that community is looking for right now are people safe? We heard limited reassurance that the community is safe, but we do know that there's a large-scale mobilization of law enforcement, both state, federal, and local, that are addressing this situation. But I think that people want to hear what specific actions are being taken. What is the area of operation, even broadly, that they're looking at? Do they think that the suspect is in the community, or did they flee? Commissioner Miller pointed out a really good point here, which is, based upon multiple shootings over time and distance, and the fact that the shooter was able to evade police shows that there is a more sophisticated level of planning that went into this attack, and more importantly, how this suspect is evading police. We need to understand what are those resources that are being applied by law enforcement right now to address this suspect who is now on the run for well over 12 hours.
Yeah, and Commissioner Harrison, let me bring you in, former police commissioner in Baltimore. That's also one of the things that I think is still lingering, is the reassurances or just more information that is needed really for the public of where exactly is the area, the search area at this point. I mean, we know that there's a shelter in place for Lewiston, Lisbon, and Bowdoin. Bowdoin is where the suspect is from. But limited information on exactly how far people should be concerned in terms of the shelter in place. Why do you think that is? What does that tell you?
Well, thank you for having me. I think, number one, that speaks to exactly why we see the state police leading this, because this spans beyond any one jurisdiction, and it's multiple jurisdictions. And they are now searching far beyond Lewiston. They're searching likely the entire state, even with help outside of the state. And so the one thing, and I've had to do this many times in two major cities, and your previous guest was right, to give reassurance, number one, that we are on this and that law enforcement is on it and that there is a coordinated, synchronized effort to find this individual and hold them accountable. We would love to have had more details about the investigation, about what's next, but given the assurance that law enforcement is synchronizing their efforts and it's a coordinated effort to locate this individual, is number one. Yes, we want to give reassurance that people are safe, but I think more importantly, in a state of crisis, reassuring people that all of the efforts are synchronized and all of the resources that are available to the president, to the governor, to the mayors, city managers are all at play here. And I think they did a good job of giving reassurance that they're united. As time goes on, we'll hear more about details. As I said last night on the show, we talked about the skill and the ability of Mr. Card to inflict harm on so many people so fast. I am concerned about his skill and ability to evade police for long periods of time, his ability to anticipate how police would come after him, and his ability to inflict that amount of carnage again if he's faced with an encounter with law enforcement. To have that much ammunition and to shoot that many rounds that fast, it's possible he could have more ammunition, as much, if not more, and could position himself to be able to have a violent encounter with law enforcement. We all talked about the three likely encounters: suicide, surrender, and/or a violent encounter with law enforcement. All of them are plausible, but all of them are very dangerous. And so this has to be very well planned. And as a leader, we can't give too much too fast, because we have to make sure that we're staying in front of the decisions that Mr. Card is making.
Which seems to be a real challenge now as we're watching, as this is playing out, and they do not know, they're saying, where he is right now. A question still also lingering is how many weapons they believe that he had or even has with him at this point. If everyone can just stay with us. We just got in a statement from President Biden on this. It's a pretty lengthy statement, but he says off the top, once again, our nation is in mourning after yet another senseless and tragic mass shooting. Today, Jill and I are praying for the Americans who've lost their lives, for those still in critical care, and for the families, survivors, and community members enduring shock and grief. I also urge area residents to heed the warnings and guidance of local officials. Numerous federal law enforcement personnel are on the scene and actively working with state and local partners. As I told the Maine Governor Janet Mills and Senators Collins, King, and Congressman Golden last night, I've directed my administration to provide everything that is needed to support the people of Maine. We will continue to be there every step of the way. Bottom line, 18 people are dead today after 2 mass shootings last night, and a suspect is now still on the run, and they do not know yet where he is.